So you can be excited about announcement, that new announcement related on ICS in coming sessions. So now I'm very much honored to introduce our keynote opening and keynote speaker, Governor Mohammed bin Ibrahim. So before he opened the speech, I would like to tell about Governor Ibrahim. I have a privilege to know Governor for a long period of time, maybe around 20 years. And of course, as a distinguished central bank governor, he has a very excellent career from monetary policy to financial stability. But he has a very unique character as a central bank governor. He knows insurance. Not only that, he knows insurance very well. 17 years ago, we had very important IAIS conference here hosted by Bank Negara and hosted by particularly insurance director at that time. And we are very much impressed. We had so much technical discussion, but he led the discussion, complicated discussion in a remarkable way and reached conclusion. Of course, as a host, it's a marvelous host. And at that time, the insurance director was current Governor Ibrahim. So we are so impressed, and we are extremely happy that we are again hosted by you, and excellent conference. So thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Victoria Saporta, Chair of IAIS Executive Committee, Mr. Yoshihiro Kawai, IAIS Secretary General, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak today at the IAIS Annual Conference 2017. Welcome to Kuala Lumpur, a very warm Kuala Lumpur, but sometimes it rains very heavily. We are delighted to host the 24th IAIS Annual Conference. The last time this conference was held in Southeast Asia was 14 years ago. Bank Negara Malaysia has a very long and productive association with the IAIS, as Yoshi have said. Not long after IAIS was established in 1994, a new insurance legislation was enacted in Malaysia. This was a watershed event, changing the course for the development of the industry. A deep and comprehensive reform was instituted, and the course was set to modernize the insurance sector in Malaysia. I recall how useful the insurance core principle and other IAIS standards were in helping to shape our regulatory approach and supervisory practice. As a market with a long history of global insurers operating within our borders, we also benefited from arrangements that enable us to better supervise cross-border activities. These arrangements have continued to strengthen over time, culminating most recently in the IAIS Multilateral Memorandum of Understanding. We are therefore delighted to host this event in Southeast Asia, where the deepening of insurance market remains key to support economic risk management and broader development goals for this region. This brings me to the theme of this conference, looking beyond. It is an interesting theme. It is even more interesting if we look at the insurance industry from a broader perspective, from the angle of economic development, beyond issues of safety and soundness. My experience suggests that we ought to have a keen interest in the development of an effective and efficient insurance market that serve the advancement of our broader goals, from the provision of healthcare to building resilience against natural disasters, supporting trade, enhancing social security, and providing the opportunity for people to improve their livelihood. Insurance is a great invention, one of those inventions that touches people's life. Long before big data became in vogue, insurers have effectively used data to turn unknowns into knowns and perils and hazards into opportunities. The concept of pooling funds to assist the unfortunate and those faced with adverse situations is a very noble idea. From air travel to the launching of satellites, insurance innovation have enabled many of mankind's greatest feats, propelling civilization forward. Innovation in microinsurance have helped protect our most vulnerable communities from devastation. Today, drones are being used to inspect property, damage claims, and machine learning to detect fraud. Indeed, the industry has enabled trade to flourish, serving as the bedrock of modern economies. Ladies and gentlemen, despite this remarkable development, the world continues to face immense economic, environmental, and social challenges. The effects of climate change are real, leaving horrific damage and destruction. Economic losses in the aftermath of this year's hurricane season in the Gulf of Mexico is estimated to reach up to $265 billion. Events that were once thought to be implausible or highly unlikely have become the new normal. In many parts of the world, healthcare costs continue to rise and many face uncertain futures as public sectors, safety nets, and government finances come under increasing strain. Against this backdrop, financial inclusion for the underserved segment remains an elusive goal. For the insurance industry, this raises important issues. Two issues come to my mind. First is on the industry's role in addressing a few of the challenges facing our economies and society. And second, the manner in which regulation and supervision can adapt to support broader economic and social development. In addressing these issues, I shall attempt to advocate the idea that a rethinking and approach is an imperative. New paradigms are needed to anchor business and public policy to the realities of the future. I will touch on three of them: competitive, stability, and ethical paradigms. Let me touch on the paradigm on new competitiveness. In an increasing interconnected world, traditional models and competition deserve a rethink. Network effects will become more important, both in increasing the value of insurance products and services and to better manage risk, rather than see the competitive landscape through a zero-sum lens. Cooperative competition, or sometimes it's called co-opetition, can result in synergistic benefit. For example, the Hewlett-Packard clearly illustrates this idea. Just 1 year ago, after the company started operating its direct cargo trains linking China and Europe, it made the bold decision to allow other producers on board, giving up what was seen as a significant competitive advantage at that time. But the results were astonishing. By doing so, it was able to increase the frequency of departure, which allowed it to move products more quickly to Europe. Today, HP Europe-bound trains depart daily from China, with the higher frequency working to its own advantage. The notion of co-opetition is not entirely foreign to the world of insurance. Insurance marketplaces such as Lloyd's of London have long operated arrangements that deliver advantages from pooling risks and information. In Malaysia, market mechanism exists to move reinsurance documentation more efficiently between markets, participants, and to share information on fraud. The emergence of new technologies will take this further. Open application programming interfaces, or commonly known as API, will enable insurers to provide and obtain access to information that will significantly alter the operational process of insurers. But access to information will require a network of service providers who are willing to share data and information without giving away one's competitive edge. Investment in infrastructure, especially in ICT, is very expensive. By pooling funds to build shared infrastructure, the burden becomes more manageable. More investment in IT will enable new possibilities to expand insurance reach improve efficiency, and increase effectiveness. Not long ago, the natural instinct would be to resist this force of change. More than ever, cooperation, fortunes, and survival are now more closely linked. New realities require new paradigm, co-opetition. How we cope with the new realities will depend on our ability to reset our minds and leverage on network to create value at the customer, the firm, and at the system level. There is enormous potential in redefining strategies in competition and cooperation. Imagine the possibilities that could be achieved with strategic investment in shared infrastructure and the ability to share data securely across individuals and entities. We could significantly reduce costs, improve access, deliver superior customer experience, which previously not possible without the network of shared information, better management, and improved resilience against risk. A new paradigm on stability is also required. It has been 10 years since the global financial crisis. The global insurance industry is now on stronger and more stable foundation. Industry leaders and supervisors may be satisfied with what was achieved since then, but there is certainly no room for complacency. Achieving stability objective will become more challenging as the complexities of risk identification increase. We know that insurance companies can create systemic risk. Even though we may differ in our views over the intensity of such risk, there is constructive tension arising from the need to significantly strengthen regulation and supervision while balancing the need for growth, development, and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, in a world characterized by fierce competition, complex product offerings, and evolving customers' needs, there is always the risk of administering excessive and complicated regulation. This could lead to unintended consequences that can make the financial system less rather than more stable. In a dynamic world, regulation and supervision should be agile, pragmatic and dynamic, and able to respond to changing conditions in a timely manner. A bit of uncertainty ought to be tolerated, but at the same time, we should not hesitate to reverse course should a particular rule prove to be ineffective. Rules are never meant to remain relevant in perpetuity. It never does. Always run its course. It is from this perspective that regulators must have the courage to change course. In addition, from another perspective, the importance of proportionate regulation and supervision cannot be overstated. This is an area where I think we must continue to work in developing and refining the approaches to proportionality and support a more inclusive insurance market. In the larger scheme of things, as regulators, we cannot ignore the broader objective of supporting economic growth and improving the overall welfare of society. Equally important, with environmental, social, and governance consideration becoming an important criterion and increasingly adopted by investors, the ethics and sustainability of insurers' activities will be important factors in creating shareholder value. Consumers' welfare and wider social impact alongside profit will constitute key metrics by which performance is measured. This is only appropriate, as maintaining public trust and confidence is a good business strategy anyway. The idea here is not to view the insurance industry stability in isolation, but to be seen within the wider context of preserving social and economic value of the insurance system. Ladies and gentlemen, technological advances and scientific breakthrough have opened new possibilities to operate and deliver products to customers. Technological innovation will make customers better off, but insurance, on the other hand, may be confronted with some fundamental ethical issues. For insurance companies, this requires a rethinking of professional and ethical standards, thus a need for a new paradigm on ethics. For example, with greater ability to aggregate and analyze more data from multiple sources, Questions arise on the extent insurers should consider using genetic and social preferences in underwriting, or whether it is acceptable to commit someone to a long-term financial undertaking when they may not fully comprehend the implication of their choices, even though the insurers might truly believe it is good for them. And then there is always the dilemma and trade-off in directing more resources towards social impact investment in cases where it lowers risk-adjusted return for policyholders. Ladies and gentlemen, as advancement in technology brings about various unknowns and a blurring of business line, professional and ethical standards need to be embedded in our DNA to ensure the integrity of our industry. When it comes to ethical values and conduct, we must move beyond conceptual discussion to practical application. Time and effort must be undertaken to raise a standard of competence and developing well-defined codes of behavior. This should take into account an insurer's legal and professional obligation, the wider impact on society, issues of equity and fairness, and the preservation of virtues such as honesty and compassion. These issues I raise are delicate issues and can involve complex ethical choices. It will test the values of cooperation, its people, its leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, let me mention a few words on specific challenges for regulation and supervision in the future that is before us. First, the lifespan of regulation is getting shorter and shorter, with new areas of risk emerging faster than regulators can write new rules. Second, and adding to the complication, potential threats are also creeping in from beyond the traditional regulatory perimeter. This can be both from non-traditional players or unfamiliar business models or technologies. Third, we may have to simply accept that we may never fully grasp or understand emerging risks facing the industry in a timely manner. Allow me to offer some reflection on these issues. First, we need a better and effective approach to collate intelligence, including from non-traditional sources. Technological advancement offers additional opportunities. There is clearly vast potential on the use of big data and machine learning to improve risk, identification, and assessment. Last year, the US SEC successfully charged a bank for failing to adequately train its representative in the sale of certain complex debt instruments using custom analytics. Tools were developed to sift through millions of trading records, a task that would have been impractical with traditional investigative techniques. I conjure that supervisory arrangement to share information across agencies and borders had also assisted in expanding and strengthening the investigation effectiveness. Second, we need broader toolkits that can allow for more targeted and proportionate intervention. Several are worth mentioning. Good progress has been made in recovery and resolution planning that ensure large financial institutions can be unwound in an orderly fashion without threatening broader stability. In Malaysia, the takaful and insurance protection system complements supervision through differentiated premium that creates strong incentive for insurers to maintain prudent risk profile. And different enforcement approaches, such as enforceable undertaking, can be an effective way to tailor supervisory responses to risk at the institution level. Third, we need to recognize that regulation is as much an art as it is a science. Experience suggests that authorities should prioritize rules that are appropriate for their jurisdiction, and at the same time allow room for regulatory and supervisory discretion to respond to emerging and specific risks. This is important if we are to reconcile and balance the trade-off between the practical limitation that regulators face, the desire to avoid excessive regulation, and the need for authorities to act to mitigate risk. The exercise of regulatory discretion should be subjected to appropriate rigor and accountability, and it should be supported by a stronger focus to develop regulatory experts rather than just more regulation. This requires deep knowledge of the industry, but also wisdom and dissentment. In the current state of constant change, building the capacity of supervisors is one of the most critical priorities to guard against threat to stability without impeding growth and innovation. Finally, we need to create room for experimentation. While rules are not meant to restrict innovation, they often have the effect of doing so. This might end up leaving customers worse off and insurers exposed to higher business risks than necessary or appropriate. When faced with the stark choice of doing nothing and risking harm to public interest or writing rules to control something that we do not yet fully understand, it's only sensible for us to experiment and learn from it. This point is also crucial. When technology offers so much potential to increase financial inclusion, platform-based solutions and insurtech companies are opening up insurance access to large segments of population at a fraction of the previous cost. To fully benefit from such possibilities, some regulators have adopted regulatory sandboxes to test solutions and design regulations that are appropriate. There will be no doubt that other approaches can be taken to experiment and innovate. And when things do not work, we must be prepared to change tactics and strategy. Let me conclude before some of you fall asleep. In Malaysia, when you have lunch and when the environment is warm, it's very conducive for a fiesta and a siesta. Over the last decade, the global regulatory community has come together to build strong supervisory system and more resilient market. Insurers have built extensive network in their pursuit of growth. Now is the time to build on this foundation and further strengthen them with a renewed commitment and focus on increasing the utility and impact of insurance. In the journey of many twists and turns, the IAIS has been incredibly fortunate to have Secretary General Kawai at its helm, leading the IAIS through a large part of the journey, 14 years in total, which is a very long time. While the road ahead remains challenging, I am confident that under the able leadership of Secretary General Designate Jonathan Dixon, who succeed him, the IAIS will no doubt continue to strengthen its important role in building stronger insurance system that works for all. On that note, allow me once again to warmly welcome you to Malaysia. Selamat datang, and to an engaging and productive conference ahead. Thank you very much.